Hi guys, this is Janae and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm continuing my read along for Mordu slash silent reading. I am so excited. We are on chapter 5 and I'm hoping to get to the end of chapter 8 by the end of today's live. But yeah, I've been really enjoying it. The first 4 chapters were just so fun. And we're about to have I think the first interaction between um Feidu, is it? Feidu and uh, sorry, I'm still learning the different names, but we're about to have the first interaction between the main leads, I think, and I'm really excited about it. So yeah, I think we're gonna give it like maybe 3 more minutes, just in case people are getting notifications and wanna hop onto the live. But I'm so excited. Then tomorrow we are gonna be doing volume 2 of Skammerlin. We already did one live for it on Wednesday, and yeah, I wanted to be very consistent about it being on Saturdays and Sundays like it normally was, but also on the last weekend of this month I am gonna be away from home, so I'm gonna try and see if I can maybe work around it and still do lives in that week somewhere. But because that's also the week where I'm gonna be doing like the Patreon watch along and everything like that, we'll just have to play it by ear. So, okay, I have very little else to say. Let me quickly pop up the chat so long while we wait. I bought out a separate mouse so that it's easier to control the scrolling. So you might hear the clicking in the background. I hope it's not too much of a disturbance, but I just figured it might be easier to follow than um, what we're doing at the moment, like what we did with the previous one. And also, please let me know if the audio is okay. I think it should be fine, but it's always good to just get some confirmation. Let me just enlarge these a little bit. There we go. Okay, I think we're more or less ready. I hope. Oh wow, okay, like 2 seconds and then suddenly there's people in the chat. Okay, great, the audio is good. Hi everyone. um, yeah, okay, cool. Wow, 3 people here. Hello. That is exciting. Okay, I think you're ready, I hope. Let's just do this. Okay. Poor people. Oh goodness. Okay. Um, but yeah, I think we can get going. Okay, chapter 5, Julian the Fourth, or Julian 4. I think I went with just saying Julian 4 previously. I do also have tea here with me, just heads up. Um, okay. The person was lanky, dressed in a black button-down shirt and a pair of crisply pressed pants. He had his hands stuck in his pockets and his legs stretched out and loosely crossed in front of him. His hair fell to his shoulders. If anyone met his gaze, 2 cupped smiles would pool in his wandering eyes, like an indiscriminate free broadcast. Okay, I don't know what to make of that description, but okay. Lang Chao had reached her present age without ever once having seen a man who had come on purpose to the door of Public Security Bureau to preen. Deputy Tao, is that your friend? Taran's teeth seemed to be hurting. Lang Chao was very sensitive. She noticed at once that there was something wrong with the atmosphere and asked curiously, "What is it?" Taran was just about to go over and say something when Luo Wenjuo, who had been silent until now, suddenly reached out and grabbed his elbow. He raised his chin at the newcomer. "Feidu, what are you doing here?" Feidu gathered up his long legs and raised his eyelids to look at Luo Wenjuo. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that this place had your name on it. Oopsie, I moved it too far, my bad. I need to figure out how to do this so I can actually see the comments and scroll at the same time. This is not going to work as well as I hoped. Okay, there we go. Still made a mistake. Okay, hold on. Sorry, let us just reconvene here. Where is my chapter 5 now? Rick, you would swear this is my first day. Okay. Um... Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize this place had your name on it. Luo Wenjuo narrowed his eyes expressionlessly. Fei Du gave him a smile, but wasn't quite a smile. Lang Xiao, who had no idea what was going on, cluelessly picked up a trace of her sword's art's bowels bent murderous energy. Okay. After a moment, Fei Du smiled like he was asking for a beating. He wasn't the first to look. He was the first to look away. Turning to Taran, he said, "Taran, get in the car. If I stay here any longer, Captain Law will give me a ticket." Taran didn't have a chance to answer before Luo Wenjuo interrupted coolly. "Did I say we were finished working? The two of you come back with me to City Bureau right now. We have to report our progress to Director Zhang as soon as possible and hold a conference concerning the facts of the case." Lang Chao ... "Didn't you just say, let's talk about it tomorrow?" Fei Du sighed languidly. "Superiors going through menopause truly are one of this world's calamities. Oh my word, he is asking for trouble. How about this? Talga and this lovely policewoman can ride in my car. I'll take you back to City Bureau. You've had a hard day. You may as well ride in a car where you can stretch your legs." You mind cars that aren't spacious? President Fei, I advise you not to experience riding in a police transport. I guarantee you won't even be able to stretch your arms. "Thank you for the warning, sir. Taran, I've made reservations at a Western restaurant near your office. Even if you have to work overtime, you still have to eat first, right?" "Public servants don't eat. The murderer hasn't been caught. How could we have the face to eat? What, you just want him to starve? That doesn't make much sense now, does it?" Um, Feidu is such a brat, love him. Fully agree, yes. Um, oh goodness. Sorry, I lost track. This is chaos, I'm sorry. Lang Chao still hadn't worked out whom she had offended. Taran, who'd been unable to get a word in edgewise, could finally stand it no longer. "Enough. Are you two finished?" Luo and Zhuo laughed grimly and turned to go. "Come on. Lang Big Eye, what are you looking at? If you want to look at pretty boys, you can go home and do it in your own free time. Don't waste time at work." So you acknowledge that he's pretty. That's what I'm hearing. "Beauty, why don't you consider coming to work for my company instead?" Feidu tilted his head at Lang Chao in the manner of a domineering director general. "It's a waste of the bounty of nature for you to be a cop. I'll give you 5 times your current salary." Taran turned to glare at him. You knock it off too. Fadu looked directly at him and nodded in an exceedingly obedient way, but then, of course, he lobbed another attack. All right, for your sake. Taran, said Lord Windrow, what are you still dawdling for? He couldn't offend either of these lordy show-offs, so Officer Tao rolled his eyes at the innocent night sky and quickly went after Lord Windrow. Oh, goodness. After a few steps, he subconsciously looked back. As was to be expected, he saw that Fedu hadn't moved. He was standing in place, watching him go. Seeing Taran look back, Fedu, who seemed to have been ready for this, smiled swiftly, pressing two fingers to his lips, and lightly flicked them towards Taran. What a flirt! Oh my goodness! Taran, dot dot dot. If international security awarded prizes for flirtation, young Master Fei might already have received a Nobel. On the way back, Luo Wenzhou turned the police car into Chang'e's three spacecraft, racing helter-skelter until he reached the city bureau. The big SUV, which seemed clumsily heavy, stuck to their tail the whole time, leisurely and carefree. Bang Chao had resisted for ages, but she finally couldn't resist saying something. Who is this piece of fresh meat? His driving is pretty slick. Taran to give her sorry. Taran turned to give her a veiled look, warning her to leave well enough alone. But it was already too late. Lu Wenzhou looked in the rearview mirror and saw Feidu stop his car at the city bureau's gate. He immediately called the main traffic police team next door. There's a car parked at our gate in violation of traffic regulations. Go over there and give him a ticket. The brat's got money. Give him a few. Oh my word! But also, can I just take a moment to appreciate how close to the first episode all of this has been so far? Uh, After a while, a young traffic cop returned his call in trepidation. Captain Law, I gave him a ticket. I told him, you're parked in violation of the regulations. The fine is 200 yuan. What happened? Said Law Windrow. The young traffic cop said, well, he gave me 1,000 and said he was going to park for another 800 yuan's worth. As you said, he has money. Law Windrow, dot dot dot. Young Chao looked at him cautiously. Chief, are we still having a meeting? Obviously, said Luo Wenzhou. But Luo Wenzhou couldn't hold Taoran up forever. The outcome of their day's work had been perfectly clear. There really wasn't any overtime worth working. Feidu folded the traffic ticket into a little boat, turned on the air conditioning, and leaned comfortably back in his seat. Calm under pressure, he put a English song on repeat on the car stereo system. When it had looped 8 times, Taran came out. Taran was an especially fastidious person. An old briefcase hung over his shoulder. His hair was a mess, and his leather shoes hadn't been shined in days. There was a band-aid on his chin, and his face showed traces of a frustrated weariness. He really didn't look anything like a beauty who would bring calamity. He came up and knocked on the window of Feidu's car. Are you still here? I'm assuming his car's windows were tinted. When Feidu rolled down the car window, the sound of the looping "You Raise Me Up" struggled impatiently out through the crack, flapping out in the night and scattering melodiously. Taran's expression somehow changed when he heard the song, but before he could say anything, Feidu turned off the stereo as though nothing was the matter. A video of you guys trying to break up a fight showed up online. I just happened to see it. Feidu got out of the car and pointed to the band-aid on Taran's chin. I was worried about you. Are you all right? Taran laughed bitterly, dealing with 10 brawls still wouldn't be as fatiguing as getting caught between Lowell and Joe and Feidu. Oh goodness, why am I living for that? That sentiment just made me happy. You should have just said that to them, but because I honestly would have just liked to see the expressions on their faces when they hear that. Um, Fine. Next time I'll keep a distance from the menopause sufferer. Does that work? Feiru took Taran's back. Do you want to drive or ride? Excuse you, that menopause sufferer graduated the same year I did. Taran opened the car door and got into the driver's seat. Why have you changed your car again? Didn't you say the last few were too flashy? Feidu casually went around to the passenger seat. So I bought another one. This one is cheap and steady. From now on, I'll use it especially to come pick you up. Oh my word, can you imagine having that amount of money? That is terrifying. Tauran's hand paused in the middle of buckling his seatbelt. He looked at Feidu and said sternly, if only I'd made a little more money, working a little less, and found myself a wife early, my children might be walking by now. I know. Fredu rested her elbow on the car window ledge, tilted his head, and smiled at him. Just look at those kids who go running after celebrities. They do nothing but waste time and money all day. They don't even have a goal. They're just trying to make themselves happy. Treating you as well as the greatest source of enjoyment to me. You've been good to me all these years, so I take it you must be able to put up with me. Taran, dot dot dot. Taran, come have dinner with me. I feel full just looking at you. Taran freed one hand and laid it on top of Fedu's head. What are you calling Taran? Show some respect to your elders. I. Tender words came to Fedu's lips, but then he suddenly changed his tune. What the hell is that? Officer Taran's unadorned satchel had probably been manufactured back during the Qing dynasty. It was truly decrepit. When it had a zipped close, the zipper often separated on its own to, according to its mood. Feidu hadn't noticed. Neither could he tell apart the top and bottom of the ratty bag. He had accidentally turned it upside down, sending a folder spilling out. A number of photographs scattered over his lap. In the dim light, the corpse's face looked unusually ferocious. Feidu at once sucked in a breath. If he hadn't been held down by the seatbelt, he would nearly have leapt to his feet. Is that person dead? How come it looks so bad? Those are important materials, don't mess around. Hurry up and pick them up. Feidu held his neck stiffly straight, firmly refusing to look down and meet the dead person's eyes. No, blood makes me sick. There's no blood, Taran sighed with fatigue. You aren't even scared of that ghost botherer Wenjur, but you're scared of dead people? I mean, there are many worse things to be scared of, but also I don't know. I would kind of be freaked out by corpses as well. At least I'd imagine. Um, Feidu was fumbling around, trying to get the scattered photographs and materials back into the file, screening his eyes with one hand. He cautiously took a peek, saw that there really wasn't any blood, then relaxed slightly, pinching the edges of the scattered materials one by one, as if he was clearing a minefield. He returned them to their original positions. This arduous task made Feidu behave for 5 minutes. After a while, he asked, Murder? Yes, said Taran. But we're still investigating, so I can't disclose the details of the case. I see, said Feidu. He didn't ask again. Having restored the contents of the folder, he put it back and examined the bag's broken zipper by the weak light. Poor guy, he said casually. Hmm? He went to see someone, full of yearning, not expecting that that person would prefer him dead. Having sized up the zipper, Feidu began to tinkle. Taran stared. How's that? Well, said Feidu, you took the photographs of the victim's jackets yourself, right? The tag hasn't been cut off. Oh, so obviously he was meeting someone for more. I mean, I remember still, but I can't always remember all of the details of what led them to the conclusions that they came to. We've already looked into that. It was bought at a little shop nearby. The shop owner and the surveillance cameras confirmed that the victim really did buy it himself. I'm not saying the murderer put it on him. Who'd kill someone then throw in a jacket? Feidu smiled. If you put the jacket on without cutting off the tag, then it's possible the price was rather high. Yeah, so he was planning to return it. That's what I got from that. It exceeded his level of consumption, but he had to wear it for some occasion, so he was going to wear it once and then return it. Students who aren't very well off do that when they're just starting out going to interviews. Was he a lefty? I'm assuming he means left-handed. Taran paused. He had gone to look at He Jong-yi's apartment. He quickly reviewed where everything had been placed. No. Feidu shrugged. The signs of wear and tear on the left shoe are clear. Of course, some people's dominant hand and foot aren't on the same side, but I think the greater likelihood is that he borrowed these shoes. But according to the school security guard's evidence, the person He Zhongyi had met before his death had been a man he was acquainted with, someone from the same province as him, possibly even a relative. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been speaking in dialect. Oh, right, okay, that makes sense. They reached their destination and Taran stopped the car. You mean the victim went out of his way to get dressed up before he died? So the person he met was probably a woman? Not necessarily. I mean, yeah, it could have been a man. For various reasons, but also for the romantic kind. Although he went to the effort of borrowing clothes and shoes, his outfit tends more towards the formal and reserved. To me, it looks more like he was going to a job interview or to see someone he greatly revered. If he was going to see a girl, someone who would have been making a formal introduction. Feidu opened and closed the zipper of the old briefcase and tugged at it gently. It didn't come apart. He handed the bag back to Taran. The zipper came loose. I've tightened it up for you. For example, if I were going to see you, I wouldn't wear a three-piece suit. I'd just spray on a little extra cologne. This flirt, I cannot. I'm kind of living for it though, because it's giving when Cushing vibes in the best way possible. Feidu's eyes weren't entirely black. Their color was a little light and looked especially multifaceted in the dimness. When he looked fixatedly at someone, his eyes always seemed to be speaking, making the other person sink into them in spite of themselves. Unfortunately, Deputy Captain Tao was blind. Oh my word. Oopsie, hold on, sorry. He only very seriously considered Feidu's words for a moment, then thoughtfully asked, So, if someone kills a person and then sticks a piece of paper on his forehead, what do you think that means? Feidu duly redirected his gaze. Maybe it was to keep the corpse from rising. I don't think that was it. Taran, ... Or maybe the killer felt regret after killing him and subconsciously mimicked the behavior of others, displaying respect and sadness towards the dead. Taran thought about it, then followed up. What if it wasn't covering his whole face? What if, for example, it was just a little strip stuck onto the victim's hair, just covering a little piece of his face from the forehead to the eyes? The forehead? When elders are scolding a child, People in power are bullying the weak, or someone is punishing a pet. They'll all hit the forehead. Or it could be meant to represent a label, the kind you stick on something you're selling on the market. What was written on the paper? I think it might have been money, if I'm remembering correctly. Money. Pegu raised his eyebrows. His long brows slanted until they almost met his temples, looking sternly handsome. What's wrong? I don't know. One word is too little. It's easy to overanalyze and go astray. Pegu smiled. Taran, we're at your house. Taran came back to himself, just noticing that he had gone overboard with the discussion. He opened the car door and was just about to get out. Then he suddenly remembered something and turned back. Have you eaten? Come up and wait a bit. I'll make you a bowl of wontons. Fedu clearly froze. Then his gaze became liquid. You're inviting me home? You aren't worried that it's moving a bit too fast? Though the words were very suggestive, he sat in the car without moving. If you don't want to come, then say so. You won't miss the meal anyway. Holding the car door, Taran leaned over slightly. Hold out your hand. Bewildered, Fedu held out his hand. Taran got something out and put it in the palm of his hand. When you want to throw yourself into the ocean, the best thing to do is to dress accordingly and swim a couple of laps yourself, not stay on the sidelines, clutching the life buoy and paddling your feet. You don't want to turn me gay at all. Stop making trouble. I'm going home. Drive safely. What? What did I just read? Oh my word. What? I was not expecting that because he kind of. I don't want to say he seemed oblivious in the show, but it seemed very clear that he viewed Fedu only as like a little brother, basically. So I couldn't quite, in the 8 episodes that we did have, pinpoint whether he was just so focused on seeing Fedu as a little brother that he wasn't picking up on any undercurrents, or if he was just kind of like politely ignoring it because he'd long ago realized that Fedu liked him but wasn't gonna do anything about it, basically. So this like open acknowledgement of hey, I know your agenda is not happening, it kind of threw me. Oh my word, okay. I just want to see how everything is going here. Okay, everything seems fine. I think. Yeah. Poor Taran is too tired of this queer on queer violence. Oh goodness. Fedu silently watched him walk into the rather old fashioned apartment building, then looked down at what Taran had given him. It was the card from the flowers he had sent that morning. The smell of cologne still lingered on it, and a handful of milk candy. Oh goodness. Okay, so I'm assuming like maybe he when Feidu was like, oh, I'd wear more cologne if I wanted to attract someone's attention, um, was kind of the opener that Taran felt he needed to address the elephant in the room, so to speak. The milk candies were an old brand. After several years of not seeing it on the market, Feidu had figured that the factory had closed. He didn't know where Taran could have gotten these from. Oh, that's an interesting tidbit. Possibly they were left over from earlier and expired. You couldn't see the manufacturing dates on loose goods. Feidu unwrapped one and ate it. It was an old cheap product. The texture was coarse, and it stuck to his teeth. Fortunately, it was sweet enough. He turned on the stereo, letting the song that had made Taran frown when he'd heard it play on an endless loop again. He sat quietly for a while. When he had eaten all the candy, he got up to switch to the driver's seat. As soon as he moved, he found that there was still a photograph left in the car. It was a very small ID picture that had fallen into the crack between the seats. He hadn't seen it when he had been cleaning up. Haley turned on the exterior car light and picked up the victim's ID photograph. Unlike the ferocious corpse, the photograph clearly showed the victim's features. Is he going to recognize the man now? With his attention fixed on the moon-shaped scar on the forehead of the young man in the photograph, Fedu slowly frowned. Okay, that was quite a long chapter, I feel like, but I think we're making good time. Chapter 60, Julian 5. First things next morning, Lo and Zhe went back to the city bureau to have a chat with Director Zhang, then headed over to the flower market district sub-bureau with Taran. They had just parked their car when Lang Chao, who had arrived earlier, came out to meet them. Lang Chao passed over 2 cups of coffee and quietly said, "Where have you been? They've arrested Ma Xiaowei. They identified him as a major suspect and stuffed him into the police car and brought him back here the first thing this morning. With the online media following the car the whole way, they've just been dispersed." Hearing this, Taran was instantly alarmed. "What?" Lo Wenzhou put a hand on his shoulder. "Was it according to procedure?" Lang Chao sighed and said almost inaudibly, "Captain Lo, with that Wang Hong Liang keeping watch, that kind of slip is impossible." "What's the evidence?" asked Lo Wenzhou heavily. "The cell phone," said Lang Chao quickly. "It's particularly fishy. The deceased He Zhongyi's phone was found on his roommate, Ma Xiaowei. The official word is that the person in charge of the case at the sub-bureau received a report last night saying Ma Xiaowei had been seen with a new phone that looked like the one the victim, He Zhongyi, had lost. The sub-bureau quickly dispatched people to summon Ma Xiaowei for questioning. They found the phone and turned up both Ma Xiaowei and the victim's fingerprints on it." Lo Wenzhou frowned. Taran got right to the heart of the matter. Who reported it? How could the informer tell it was He Zhongyi's phone that Ma Xiaowei had? Apparently, the phone was a just-released new model and a very expensive brand. Very few people had them here. It seemed that a relative gave it to He Zhongyi. Everyone saw when he first got it. It made a strong impression. Oh, that's interesting. Who reported it and why isn't important. Even if Wang Hongliang and his people were charging in and forcibly searching the place, they can always produce a trumped-up informer after the fact. Lo Wenzhou waved a hand. The crux of the matter is the phone. Having a victim's phone doesn't mean that Ma Xiaowei is the murderer. It's not a very compelling as evidence goes. Frick, sorry, I'm struggling today, it seems. Did Ma Xiaowei also say something he shouldn't have? Did someone use force to extract a confession from him? You've guessed it. Lang Chao glanced around like a thief and only went on when she saw no one was around. "I don't think it went as far as using force. The whelp wanted to go to work early, so he lied about his age. I had someone look into it last night. His ID has been altered. He just turned 16. I figured he'd say anything if he's frightened." They asked him where the phone came from. He stalled for a while and then said he picked it up. He picked it up at the scene of the crime? Lo Wenzhou shook his head. Did they also ask when he picked it up? Did he also say it was around 9:15 when he heard the sound of arguing downstairs and went to investigate? Lang Chao spread her hands. At the time pointed out by the other witnesses' circumstantial evidence, he said he'd gone to the crime scene and picked up the phone. Who was the murderer? I didn't see. Words failed Lowenjaw. He stroked his chin heavily. I haven't seen such a candid murderer in years. Yeah, it's kind of too good to be true. Before Lang Chao could respond, Wang Huangliang boisterously came over to them. I went to a district. Okay, so sorry, I had to pause. It seems my Discord disconnected for a moment there. So can you guys just let me know where we left off? Because I don't want to like continue and then there's a chunk missing or something like that. So if issue, just let me know where I kind of disappeared from you guys for a second. Oh goodness, what is going on? Back? I went to a district. Okay, where were we? Oh wow, okay, that's kind of far away, but we can resume from there, that's fine. Okay, before Lang Chao could respond, Wang Huangliang boisterously came over to them. I went to a district safety and security assembly yesterday, so I was absent for a bit. I just got back and heard my subordinates say the suspect. The city bureau's young leaders are so dedicated to their work. Get a load of that efficiency. Lo Wenzhou's somewhat gloomy expression warmed forcibly. He gave Wang Hongliang an unassailable smile. Wang Dage, you're pretending to be polite. In your heart, I'm sure you're thinking we're snatching the credit away from you. I'm gonna hold off on it for a second and just see like when it catches up. I don't want to keep reading if there's gonna be issues. So let's just quickly see if there's anything I can do. If it's buffering in terms of video, that's the listening experience. But if it's buffering on audio as well, then I need to like halt it because that's not great. Um, can you guys hear me at all? Okay, there's a message in the chat. I'm just gonna say it uh, loudly as well, or aloud as well. Um, I'm gonna be taking my 10-minute break now to try and see if I can fix the buffering, and then we'll come back at 10 to and hope that things are running a bit more smoothly. Okay, so I will see you guys in a bit. Okay. Oops. My fault. Hold on. Okay. Is there sound now? Sorry about that. That was fully my fault. That had nothing to do with YouTube. Don't worry. Um, sorry about that. But I hope everything is running a bit more smoothly now. I don't know what I did to fix it, but hopefully it's worked. I don't know. Okay, great. Wonderful. We love that. Let me pop the chat out again, and then we can get moving. I'm gonna be resuming from the district line because that's where you guys said we kind of left off, just to be safe. So yeah, okay. Before Lang Chao could respond, Huang Hualiang boisterously came over to them. I went to a district safety and security assembly yesterday, so I was absent for a bit. I just got back and heard my subordinate say the suspect had already been caught. The city bureau's young leaders are so dedicated to their work. Get a load of that efficiency. Lo Wen's somewhat gloomy expression warmed forcibly. He gave Huangliang a unassailable smile. Huang Dage, you're pretending to be polite. In your heart, I'm sure you're thinking we're snatching the credit away from you. I still can't believe he said that. Lo Wen's oh, sorry. Huang Hualiang grinned hugely, his two big front teeth protruding toweringly from between his lips. It's all in the service of the people. Where does credit come into it? I don't know if you would feel the same if your credit was not given. Lang Chao was a genuine article, big-eyed lamb. She had undergone the personal appraisal of City Bureau's forensic expert Tseng Guangming. According to him, her eyes were even bigger than those of Xiao Yanzi in the television drama. To guard against developing wrinkles around them, Lang Chao didn't smile rashly. When special occasions called for a smile, she usually stiffened her eyes and only moved her mouth. Okay, that's a lot of detail, and I'm like wondering where this is going. I missed a paragraph. Damn it! I might have. Okay, let me focus. Let me focus. Sorry, I'm stressing now because I'm like I really hope YouTube holds. Um, The pompous words had just come out of his mouth when Lang Chao butted in. Director Wang, I think the chain of evidence still isn't complete. The murder weapon hasn't been found, and Ma Xiaowei hasn't confessed. There is still a lot of suspicious aspects here. Do you suppose there's a follow-up work you need our help with? Okay, and then the all the details about her trying to keep herself from wrinkling up. Let's see. Um, Over time, she had developed a skillful false smile. While she was essentially a fool, the smile made her look lofty and elegant. Ordinarily, when interrogating criminals, she could multitask, playing the strict parent and other such evil characters without any affectation. Oh goodness. Lang Chao had used the word help, but her tone of voice was so powerful she seemed to be telling someone off. At the same time, her flesh crawling large eyes were fixed coldly on Wang Hongliang, utterly rooting Director Wang's in the service of people, big front teeth, and sending them back in his mouth, like a turtle retreating into its shell. Oh my word, that description though. With an altered expression, Huang Hong Liang said, Xiao Liang? What do you mean? Hey, Xiao Qiao, Xiao Qiao, how can you be so awkward? Lo Wenzhou moved Lang Qiao behind him, chiding her, then looked loftily down upon Wang Huangliang. He offered a false friendly smile. Director Wang, we didn't help at all before. If there is any use for us in the follow-up, go ahead and instruct us. Oh, goodness. All the bureaucracy here, I cannot. Wang Hongliang was full of misgivings but couldn't afford to openly quarrel with him, so he pretended not to understand any of this. He groaned, then turned and walked away. Liang Chao put her hands on her waist and shot a look at Wang Hongliang's retreating figure. I've heard the reports on him would fill up a shoebox. How can he still be so cocky? Oh my word. Lu Wenzhou put a cigarette to his mouth and shot her a look. Aren't you afraid that if we don't manage to get him dismissed this time, he'll make things uncomfortable for you in the future? Huh. Young Chow rolled her eyes. Big deal. I'll quit and get by on my looks. Oh my word, the confidence. A young woman shouldn't be so shameless. The smile on Lu Wenzhou's face crumpled away. He went on. This Masha Wei may be a murderer, or he may just be stupid. I personally incline towards the latter, because if I'd killed someone, I definitely have thought of a plausible story. Even if I just said I was at home watching TV and didn't hear anything, it would still be better than telling ghost stories to the police. Up to now, the crime scene hasn't turned up a single trace of the murderer. This person is bold but cautious, cold and ruthless. He's clearly taken precautions against being discovered. I don't believe he can be this mentally deficient. Wow. Rowan George is not pulling any punches with his words, I don't think. Um, it's just I also think it wasn't him. In a few words, Taran repeated what Feidu had said in the car the night before. So it seems we should still be looking into He Zhongyi's personal relationships. For example, who actually gave him that phone? Perhaps we can ask the person who lent him the shoes. Owen Jewel listened and gave a wow, then hesitantly said, You're saying his shoes were borrowed? That notion is kind of. It isn't my notion. First, Lo Wenjo froze. Then, as if his and Taran's hearts were beating in unison, he instantly understood the implication behind his words. His brows swiftly creased. They do? I told you it's best not to get him involved in these things. I know, yesterday was an accident. Taran briefly cut this topic short and asked, What do you think of the line of thought? Pretty good. We'll try and look into those shoes, Lowendraw pronounced. Taran, continue following up on the case. Langchao, keep an eye on the team questioning Ma Xiaowei. There is still a lot of suspicious points about him. I think he knows something else. Besides that, take some precautions against Wang Huangliang and company's little maneuvers. I'll go oversee Fatty Wang for you. Okay? If you need anything, call me anytime. Let's go. Beautiful people. Oh goodness, okay. Today we're working overtime without overtime pay. That is the bitter truth of life. I know, like, it's Wang Pangze, and I can't help but think of Lost Tomb every single time I see that kind of a moniker. Liang Chao had accumulated a mountain of curiosity in her heart, When Lu and Zhuo had gone, she trotted after Taoran. Deputy Tao, just who was that guy yesterday? Why did Chief Luo say not to let him touch the case? Of course it's not right for him to touch it, said Taran. He isn't a cop. Meng Chao didn't let him off. Then why did the chief agree so quickly after hearing it was his idea? Is he Detective Conan? Taran sighed and turned to look at her. Lang Shao forced her already very potent eyes open even wider and flashed her gaze at him. Blinking gives you wrinkles, said Taran. Lang Chao quickly used her fingers to prop up the corners of her eyes and her forehead, then simply said, in a case when Zhou and I once handled, Fei Du was the one who reported it. This was 7 years ago. But when Zhou and Taran had just graduated then, they were callow youths, unsteady in their work, especially Lu Wenzhou. He was the child of a government official and had been very arrogant when he was young, insubordinate, and displeasing with everything. He thought he was overflowing with talent, number one in the world, number two being an English fellow named Sherlock Holmes. Oh my word, I love that. He didn't think he was going to work every day. He thought he was going to save the galaxy. His handling of affairs was highly unreliable. When he was just starting out on low-level field assignments, if he was sent out to reconcile a community dispute, he could easily reconcile it into a battle. Oh my. That afternoon, there was a band of robbers roaming around who needed to be caught. All over, police reacted. The city bureau, every sub-bureau, and even the local police stations sent people over. Only the youthful Luo Wenzhou and Taran, who had been judged by their elders as likely to do more harm than good, were left on duty. 101 got in contact and said a child had called. Oh, I'm assuming it's 110. Let's rather put it like that. 110 got in contact and said a child had called in a case in their jurisdiction. He'd gone home from school for the weekend and found his mother's corpse at home. That child was Fei Du. He was in middle school then. That's like, I obviously know a bit of the story at this point because of the show, but it's still so sad. Later, the investigation showed that his mother had killed herself. Wenju went to tell him in person, but he didn't believe it. Since then, they hadn't gotten along. While he spoke, Taran had already reached the sub-bureau's gate. You must have been able to tell that his family is fairly well off. His father was a standard businessman, away from work for work all the time. When his wife died, it was several days before he came back. Feidu wasn't very sociable when he was little. He went through several housekeepers, and none of them stayed. He was usually alone in the big house where his mother died. That was the first proper case that had passed through our hands. It had a special significance. We couldn't let it go. I felt bad whenever I thought of that child having no one to mind him. So during the New Year and other holidays, I would take him in for a few days. He had a fair amount of contact with us during that period. As time went on, we found out the child had a special talent. For what? Said Lang Chao. Taran paused, then quietly said, crime. Ooh, I kind of love it. I don't know why, it just makes me so excited. I love mastermind main characters. Unfortunately, Lo and Joe had serious character development before the novel started. Yeah, I don't think I could stomach him as the youth that Taran was describing. I'm sure Priest would somehow still write him to be likable, but I would rather not find out. Lang Chao immediately noticed that the word he'd used had been crime and not deduction or investigation or something. But before she could question him further, Taran had already brought the conversation to a halt. He waved at her and hurriedly walked away. Chapter 7. Julian 6. Deputy. Deputy Captain Tao. Taran turned and saw the sub-bureau's water spout wander, little glasses Shao Hai Yang pelting towards him. Damn, that's a mouthful. Shao Hai Yang's glasses had been broken yesterday, and he hadn't yet taken the time to switch to new ones. They hung crookedly down over his cheekbones. He stood breathlessly in front of Taran, his expression uncommonly grave as he took several deep breaths. Taran's chest hurt a little just looking at him. Shao Haiyang's face was as tense as if he had just had a facelift. He wiped his sweaty palms on his pants and pushed up his glasses, which were on their last gasp. Then he could clear his throat. And fish a notepad out of his pocket. Deputy Captain Tao, there is something I want to report to you. Taran good-naturedly waited for him to catch his breath. Don't rush. Anything you have to say, take your time. It's like this. Yesterday, while we were having inquiries in the West District, I discovered the living situation over there is very complex, highly fluid and seasonal. It's normal for renters to move away when they change jobs. As for those overcrowded illegal rentals, they're really more run-down long-term hostels. Because of this, relationships between people aren't very close, except for people from the same place looking after each other. Yesterday, my colleagues worked all day without getting much useful information. Soren gave a faintly encouraging nod. Right? But among the people living with He Zhongyi, there was one from the same province as him called. Shao Haiyang flipped through his memo book. Called Zhao Yu Long. He got on well with the victim. Apparently, He Zhongyi got the delivery job on his introduction. Ma Wei said he's had to go back home to deal with something these past few days. Taran raised his eyebrows in surprise. He had just been thinking of contacting this person. Yesterday evening, I found the person in charge of the supply for the coffee shop chain and got Zhao Yulong's contact information, said Xiao Haiyang. When he heard the news, he agreed to take the last long-distance bus back to Yang City last night. I arranged to see him today. Taran looked at him thoughtfully. I thought the Sub-Bureau's investigation was focused on Ma Xiaowei. Shao Haiyang's face tensed even further. He subconsciously tugged at the hem of his shirt. I've been thinking that there's something wrong with that mysterious individual who gave the victim the phone. Now they've identified Ma Xiaowei as the murderer. There are still many questionable points. I discussed with our captain. He told me to not be such a smartass and stop buying trouble. Oh my word! But I'm so glad that Law and Jaw's bureau are gonna adopt him because I feel like he's much more suited for their bureau. Um, at this point, Taran's face grew serious. His warm smile vanished. What time did you arrange to meet? Um, said Xiao Haiyang, looking at his watch. If the long distance bus isn't late, an hour from now. Taran came to a prompt decision. I'm going with you. Come on. While the lowly criminal policeman pounded the pavement with the sun beating down on them, Master Fei was reclining in a soft swivel chair in his office. He had his forehead propped up on one finger. On the desk next to him was a laptop whose screen showed the short and unremarkable account of He Zhongyi's life. Feidu found a phone number in his address book and made a call. Hi, Changshung? It's me. Feidu listened to the person on the other end saying something, then looked down and laughed. Right, it's a little embarrassing. There is actually something I'd like to ask you your help with. Less than half an hour later, Feidu successfully got what he wanted: the footage from all the surveillance cameras around Changguang Mansion on the night that it had been open for business. During the midday rest, Feidu warmed up a jar of sweet milk in the tea room microwave, off-handedly complimented a secretary's figure, and advised her to eat well and not diet anymore, then locked himself in his office. Oh my word, okay, this man really is just on another level of flirting, because even though he might not mean it that way, you could also understand why people might take it that way, so he put on his headphones with the song from the car playing on repeat, then got out a sheet of A4 paper. Using a series of abstract markings only he could understand, he sketched a simple typographical map. He fiddled with his pen, pondered a moment, then lightly drew some circles on it. He wrote uh, 8 to 9:30. Then the tip of his pen paused, and he changed 8 to 8:30. Feidu selected a few surveillance files from among a big heap of them, opened them all together, chose the segment from 8:30 to 9:30, and watched them on fast forward. On the screen, several images quickly played at the same time. He leaned indolently back in his chair. All the vigor in his body seemed to be gathered in his eyes as he motionlessly watched the screen. That's a weirdly, like, I don't even want to say weirdly accurate way of describing it, because we only have the actor playing the live action version to kind of like contrast and compare, but I feel like the actor nailed that feeling from this description. Or is that just me? Like, I could not have put it into better words than what was just said there. Meanwhile, briefcase tucked under his arm, wearing his flashy sunglasses, Lo Joe was strolling around the traffic hub in the flower market district. From time to time, he would stretch out an arm towards the taxis passing in the road. Unfortunately, none of the taxis racing by were free. Upon seeing this, the flower market district's special product, a string of unlicensed black cabs, all issued invitations to him. Need a ride, handsome? Oh, where are you heading? It's cheap and faster than a taxi. Lowen Joe critically inspected the ranking of black cabs and finally stopped in front of one young man with a crew cut. The young man was very alert. At once, he solicitously opened the car door for him. Please get in. Where are you heading? Lowen Joe didn't answer. He got in. The crew-cut young man turned on the air conditioning for him and steadily drove out of the line of cars. You still haven't said where you want to go, handsome. Just keep driving on ahead, all right? Lowenjo took off his sunglasses. His keen gaze met the driver's in the rearview mirror, and the driver froze, feeling inexplicably uneasy. I have here an anonymous report. When they had travelled some distance, Lo and Joe unhurriedly opened his briefcase, fished out a photocopy document, and casually flipped through it. The driver's expression altered at once. Nearly scraped against the car next to him, meeting with a long horn blast. Lo and Joe was unmoved. I'm not with your sub-bureau. Don't panic. Just keep driving. I have something to ask you. Taran and Xiao Hai Yang successfully met with He Zhongyi's fellow provincial Zhao uh, Zhao Hu Long. The three of them went to a little noodle shop together. Zhao Hu Long was into middle age. He had been scraping out a living in Yan City for many years. While his position was still insecure, he was a lot more respectable than the young men who knocked around everywhere without catching a break. The man's face had the tired look of someone who had ridden 10 hours and more on a long distance bus, which, to be fair, he did. Okay, let me just see here. Agreed. I feel like all the actors did really well, and it's a shame we might never get to see them handle some of the most interesting, challenging scenes later on. Yeah, honestly, I appreciate at least knowing how good it could have been, but at the same time, I wish I hadn't known because now I just want more. It's quite a catch-22 because at least we got to see some of it, unlike with Urha and many of those other ones, which I don't know if we'll ever see the light of day. Um, but yeah, Zhao Hunyang. Oh, sorry, we read that bit. Da-da. He blinked hard several times, then generous bags under his eyes trembling. I never expected anything would happen to him. Officers, is it alright if I smoke? No one in the little noodle shop was enforcing anti-smoking regulations. The place was full of men puffing away. Zhao Yulong took two big drags and rubbed his face. Zhongyi was a well-behaved kid. A lot of people with nothing better to do go to the pool halls or gaming parlors, but he never did. He was steady, went to work, and saved money. He said he wanted to send it home to pay for his mother's medical treatment. He didn't loot or steal or gamble. He certainly didn't cause trouble. How could this happen to him of all people? Ask me anything you want. As long as I know the answer, I won't hold back. Taran had to had been examining Zhao Yulong. He found that while held his chopsticks with his right hand when he ate, he held his cigarette with his left hand and kept his teacup on that side as well. This was a common occurrence. In the past, parents would worry that their child would fight when eating at the table and forcibly correct a lefty. Uh, so probably he's the one who the guy borrowed the shoes from. Aaron got a photograph out of his bag. It was of the shoes worn by the victim. I'd like to ask you, if I might, whether you lent these shoes to He Zhongyi. Zhao Yulong took a look. The rims of his eyes nearly reddened. He nodded faintly. They're mine. He he passed away wearing those shoes? Yes, these shoes are crucial, said Taoran. Would you know why he wanted to borrow them? Zhao Yulong looked a little lost. He thought, then said, he said he was going to a pretty upscale place to meet someone, a place called something Guang Cheng Guang House, or was it Villa? Xiao Haiyang abruptly sat upright. Chengguang Mansion? That's it, said Zhao Yulong. That was the name. To meet whom? When? Zhao Yulong shook his head. He didn't say. I asked, but that child had very upright ideas, and he could keep his mouth closed. Oh goodness, okay. Shanghai Yang quickly followed up. Mr. Zhao, He Zhongyi had a new cell phone, didn't he? Yes, he did, said Zhao Yulong. The white one, right? He never could bring himself to use it. He always carried the old one he'd had before. He'd take the new phone out to look at it sometimes, though he put a lot of protective film over it first. Do you know who gave him that phone? Asked Xiao Haiyang. Zhao Yulong frowned slowly. What's wrong? Asked Taran. At first he said someone from his hometown gave it to him. I thought it was very strange at the time, because I'd never heard him mentioning having any acquaintances in the city before. I was afraid he'd done something stupid, met some bad people. Isn't buying someone such an expensive thing out of nowhere, showing pointed action for no reason? Zhao Long tapped out some cigarette ash. I wouldn't leave him alone and kept on asking, and he finally said that one day, while he was making deliveries, he had a conflict with someone. The other person hit him a few times, and he didn't fight back. Afterwards, I guess the other guy regretted it or something and gave him the phone as a formal apology. Taran and Xiao Young exchanged a look. They hadn't heard about this when they'd gone to make inquiries. Was there anything worth concealing about having a conflict with someone who later formally apologized to you? If this was true, why had He Jong-yi been vague about the details and even pretended an acquaintance had given it to him? He Jong-yi lived with so many people that if no one had noticed that he'd been beaten up, it clearly showed that the fight hadn't been serious. So why had the other party sent a valuable object along with a formal apology? All of a sudden, this homicide case that had seemed like it could be quickly solved by investigating the victim's personal relationships had inexplicably turned into something bewildering. Zhao Yilong didn't know the precise origins of the mysterious phone, but he did supply the approximate time the conflict had taken place. Taran and Shah Haiyang had to follow this clue to root around for traces at the delivery company He Zhongyi had worked at. Afternoon, without any warning, the boundlessly clear sky changed its mood. The rampant sunlight that hemmed in on all sides and swallowed up the black clouds that came out of nowhere. There was humidity in the oppressive wind. It was clear that a rainstorm was about to break out. Luo Wen-jo got out of the cab near a subway entrance, but didn't go in. He put his hand on the car door and looked all around. A minibus parked at the intersection moved suddenly when his gaze swept over it. It slunk off as if it had a guilty conscience. That's also a nice description. Luo Wen-jo bent slightly and spoke into the driver's ear through the half-open window. Someone's watching you. Be careful. Come to me if you need anything. Despite the air conditioning blowing cool air at him, the driver's forehead was covered in sweat. He nodded quickly. Rowan Joel looked at him profoundly, then turned and went into the subway station. He had just come through the security check when his phone rang. Taran? What is it? He said, swiping his card and going through. Then he stopped in his tracks. What? Say that name again? The window in Feidu's office, which hadn't been shut properly, was blown closed by the wind with a slam. Some papers floated down to the floor, rustling. Just then, his hand loosely holding the mouse suddenly moved. Feidu froze one of the surveillance camera images, enlarged it, and played it again. He noted that the time was around 8:50 p.m. This was a very peripheral camera, hardly within the limits of Tangchong. Sorry, where did that come from? Chengguang Mansion. It was focused on a gravel path, though it was very early summer. Owing to the nearby water feature, the mosquitoes were already plentiful. After dark, there were very few passerby, and anyone who did go by was in a hurry. But there was one hesitant figure that paced under the street lamp for a long time. The camera showed that this person was wearing crudely made and uncoordinated formal attire. He was rather skinny and not tall. He stayed where he was, smoking several cigarettes in a row. He was tightly holding a craft paper envelope. From time to time he looked in a certain direction for a moment. After a while, he seemed to get a phone call. He said a few words to the person on the phone, then hurriedly walked out of the frame. Okay, I just need to breathe for like 2 seconds. My throat is getting very sore. Sorry, I just keep hitting the mic. Feidu replayed the segments of the video several times. He couldn't be sure that this was the victim, who he'd only glimpsed once. He grabbed his car keys, closed his computer, and left. 45 minutes later, Feidu arrived at the Flower Market District's commercial center. He looked up at the increasingly gloomy sky, dredged up an umbrella from the trunk of his car, then walked to the landscaped grounds around Changguang Mansion. Feidu had an excellent sense of direction. He hardly got turned around finding the position of that security camera. The water vapor in the air was so thick that it was about to start pouring down. He carefully examined the camera's position, recalling the direction the person in the video had looked in. He turned. At the far end of the path, Changguang Mansion could be vaguely seen. Feidu's gaze fell on a garbage can next to him. On the ashtray, several lonely cigarette butts. Why am I struggling now? Let's try that again. Sorry. Um, on the ashtray, several lonely. Okay, no, I'm not misreading that. I thought I missed a lay somewhere, but I did not. On the ashtray, several lonely cigarette butts. The place was off the beaten track. The garbage can was clean. Hardly anyone ever threw anything into it. A sanitation worker might come by only once every other week to clean it out. Feidu took a silk handkerchief from his pocket and carefully picked up the cigarette butts. His phone suddenly rang. Feidu unhurriedly wrapped up the cigarette butts, then took out his phone. Seeing the caller ID, he smiled before he spoke. What, you suddenly feel that not seeing me for a day is like spending 3 years apart? Taran's tone was serious. The night before last, were you at the Chengguang mansion? Yes. Feidu paused. What is it? Were you with a person called Zhang Donglai? Feidu immediately froze. Before he could respond, a flattening thunderclap rang out. The heavy rain came pouring down. Okay, one more chapter to go, and then we're at least where I kind of wanted to be for this read along, so that's good. Chapter 8 Julian 7 Lang Chao charged into the City Bureau building carrying a folded umbrella, leaving a string of sopping wet footprints. She slipped on her way up the stairs and nearly fell on her face, desperately grabbing the railing. She looked up just in time to see Lo Wen-jo coming down from the floor Director Zhang's office was on. Lo Wen-jo met her eyes, his face unusually grave. Lang Chao twisted her wet bangs off her forehead. Chief, what's the matter? When you look so serious, I start getting nervous. Today, following a lead given to them by He Zhongyi's roommates, Taran and the sub-bureau's little glasses deduced that He Zhongyi may have encountered a mysterious individual before his death, Lo Wen-jo said quietly. For certain reasons, the individual apparently had a slight conflict with He Zhongyi while he was working. Afterwards, as a formal apology, this person gave him the cell phone. Lo Wen-jo was tall and long-legged. He walked very quickly. Lang Chao had to trot to keep up with him. Hearing his words, she felt her brains were about to evaporate, along with the water in her hair. Somewhat hazily, she repeated, a slight conflict and a phone? For what? For that? I have conflicts with people on the subway every day. How come no one's ever given me a phone? I feel you. For once, Lo Wen-jo didn't pick up her joke. Taran and Shao Haiyang went back to the distribution center the victim worked at to investigate. They made inquiries along his delivery route. Okay, so it seems it froze again. I don't know. Just let me know if there's like an issue again. I'm not sure. Okay, just a second, then we're fine. Then I can keep going. Did did it seem like you guys missed anything? 'Cause for me, I finished off with what was it? The shop security camera happened to catch the person's license plate number. I don't know why the internet is so weird today. It's very strange. Okay, let's see. The witness said that some time back, when He Jong Lee had finished making his deliveries and was getting ready to leave, he really did get into a fight with someone not far from the shop's door. The shop security system happened to catch the person's license plate number. As they spoke, the two of them had arrived outside an interrogation room. Through the one-way glass, they could see Taran sitting across from a young man. He was around 20, with hair dyed the color of flax, dressed in luxury brand name clothes. He was clearly desperately trying to force down his anger. Fury was nearly steaming out of the seven apertures. What the hell did I just read? Out of the seven apertures of his face. There we go, that's better. Yes, I may have beaten up this loser, so what? I've beat up a lot of people, but this really has nothing to do with me. If you don't believe me, ask Feidu. Didn't we go together that night? Officer Tao, let me tell you, if it weren't for Master Fei's sake, you guys arresting me like this, I'd already. Lang Chao looked blankly at the aggressive young man in the interrogation room. This is the second suspect? Why have you brought him to the city bureau? On the night he died, the victim had said he was going to a place called Chengguang Mansion. That person in there was at Chengguang Mansion that day. Luanzhou sighed. His name is Zhang Donglai. He's the son of a rather prestigious local businessman. Mm. Oops, I think I. Damn it, I lost my space. No. Okay. Oh, a rich kid. Lang Chao blinked. So? He's also Director Zhang's nephew, said Luo Wenzhou. Lang Chao stared. Before she could restart her blue screen brain, a civil policeman on duty ran over and quietly said to Luo Wenzhou, Captain Luo, there's a Mr. Fei here. Says he wants to see Deputy Tao. Fei Du politely thanked the deputy officer who had poured him a drink. He took it and drank a mouthful, then put it aside. The coffee they had poured him was instant, and it had a peculiar flavor of sesame oil. Ooh. He looked around at the decor inside the city bureau. He felt that it was all in poor taste, and badly made to boot. There was flecks of paint on the corner of the table. It had probably just been painted. There was still a faint smell. When Lord Jor came in, he saw Feidu earnestly scrutinizing the grain of their table. He was frowning, his expression deeply gloomy. If he hadn't been able to see under the table, Lord Jor would almost have thought there was a body hidden there. Oh, what would? Fedu looked up at him. He didn't seem at all surprised. He nodded simply and said, "Do sit down." I don't know how Lu Wenju is gonna react to that. Lu Wenju, dot dot dot. The brat took this for his own house. Fedu stirred his sesame-flavored coffee with a plastic spoon. "Where's Tawaran?" he asked. "He's busy." Owenjo pulled out a pen and spread out his notebook. Without any useless small talk, he got right to the point. "On the night of the 20th, the day before yesterday, were you with Jiang Donglai? Think before you answer." Fedu leaned back in his chair, slightly raised his head, and untidily crossed his long legs. While his posture couldn't be called unseemly, it still gave the impression that this place couldn't quite contain him. Oh, that's a cool description. He looked at Lo Winjo with a smile that wasn't quite a smile and asked in return, "Captain Lo, am I a suspect?" Lo Winjo looked at him coldly. Fedu spread his hands indifferently. "Then you had better be a little more polite to me. If I'm not a suspect, a summons for questioning isn't compulsory. I can leave whenever I want if I'm unhappy." Oh my word, he's such a brat. "Oh." Lumundro put down his pen. "I have to make you happy first." "All right. Why don't you tell me how I should do that? Should I sing you a song? Or go out and buy you a bag of candy?" Who had been turned down with some milk candies by Officer Tao the night before, had nothing to say. The storm outside beat against the window so hard it rattled. The two people in the room, each finding the other displeasing to the eye, sat across from each other in silence. After a while, perhaps thinking he was being childish, Lo Windrow laughed derisively, got up, got out a pack of cigarettes, tapped it lightly against the table, and was about to light up. "I do mind," Fedu said without having been asked. "I've had a touch of um, pharyngitis. I'm not sure. Recently. If you lost, if you lost your voice," Mohenjo said with a false smile, "we wouldn't be far from world peace." That was a line in the live action as well, and I'm loving it just as much now as I did then. Oh, the dialogue is so good, I can't deal. But all the same, he put down his lighter and twirled the unlit cigarette in his hand several times. "Jiang Donglai said that he met you at the door of Guang Mansion around 8 the night before last. From then until midnight, when you left, you can vouch for his whereabouts." "I arrived a little before 8 and left at 10 past midnight," Fedu said coolly. "I did, in fact, speak to him at both of those times. The events arranged by the owners. Oh, why did my camera just die?" That's unexpected. Okay, I am still here. I just need to quickly change out my camera's battery. I'll be right with you guys. Okay, so it seems like things are just not going easily today. The video or YouTube disconnected while I was fixing the camera, and it seems like it's reconnected. Please just confirm for me if everything is fine like it's supposed to be. 'Cause yeah, oh my word. I'm so sorry there's so much struggle with the tech today. Um, the bickering is so funny. The bickering is great. It never stops, which is fantastic. I'm so excited for the bickering because I'm kind of here for like old married couple kind of bickering. As long as it's kind of good natured. Uh, okay, cool. I'm so sorry about this. But we will be getting to the end of chapter 8, even if it means I have to run a bit longer than I was originally planning. Okay. Um, I arrived a little before 8 and left at 10 past midnight, Pedro said coolly. I did, in fact, speak to him at both of those times. The events arranged by the owner were rather abundant. If said he was in my line of sight the whole time, that would be illogical, and you wouldn't believe me anyway. Lowendraw's hands were busily tearing at the cigarette paper. Why? Weren't you two raising hell together the whole time? No, apparently not. Fadu raised his eyebrows on the table. Sorry, raised his eyebrows on the table. That's not a sentence. Fadu rested his elbows on the table and leaned forward slightly. The smell of cologne mixed with rain wafted over like threads of silk. Because I don't like sharing partners with other men, Captain Law, if you ask me such a boring and disingenuous question again, I'll have to say goodbye. My word, where did that come from? Like one moment they were talking about suspects, and now they're talking about the men that Fadu have but does not want to share with people. I hadn't noticed you were so picky. Lowendraw delivered the strictly businesslike taunt without looking up, then said, in other words, you can't testify that Zhang Donglai didn't kill anyone at the Chengguang mansion that day. I can't, but there are people who can. I can have everyone who came in contact with him that night over here within 2 hours. A handbag per person should cover the travel expenses. Lowendraw's pen stabbed at the table. Oh my word. Are you hinting that you're planning to use your wealth to falsify evidence? What, a few fashion models perjuring themselves? You're worried the cream of the police force won't be able to get the truth out of them? Feidu shook his head. No, I'm telling you why Jiang Donglai can't be the murderer. Feidu leaned back in his chair again, widening the distance between him and the windrow, drawing his voice out in the indolent tone peculiar to him. He said, if it was Jiang Donglai, doing it himself would clearly be unwise. It's entirely in his power to have the victim kidnapped, then illegally detained or killed in secret. Either way, the population of the West District is a transient is transient. Dozens of people leave without saying goodbye every day. If one person goes missing, no one will notice. Even if someone reported it to the police, there would still be no one to take heed. Hearing this speech that entirely discounted the law and the state, Lowendraw's hands itched uncontrollably. He wanted to give the scumfay a good beating. With a great effort, he resisted, and I just lost my place. Damn it. I feel very incompetent today. Thank you guys for your patience. With a great effort, he resisted. The tip of his pen ripped through paper, leaving an angry hole. Killers often aren't wise when they kill. Oh, You're talking about a crime of passion? Feidu paused. Aside from the injury that knocked the victim unconscious, was there any other blunt force trauma? Are you questioning me or am I questioning you? Said Law and Jaw. Sounds like the answer is no, said Feidu in a rather calm voice. In a crime of passion murder, the murderer's emotions erupt. His rage instantly reaches its zenith. It's still usually it will usually bend itself like an eruption as well, with the victim unconscious on the ground with no power to resist. You would expect to see his head crushed like a watermelon. He was strangled? He leaned his elbows on the chair's armrests, his fingertips propping up his chin. He smiled. Strangling is a lengthy and enjoyable means of killing. I don't like that description. Sometimes it even has that kind of flavor to it. Would a person dying of thirst be willing to sit down and sip tea? Personally, I think that sequence doesn't seem very natural. It is an interesting way to view it. Bowen Joe's expression was severe. You think killing someone is sipping tea? It's only a metaphor, Feidu shrugged, focusing on the minor issue while avoiding the larger one. Zhang Donglai wouldn't kill someone. Even if he killed someone, he wouldn't dump the body. Even if he dumped the body, he still wouldn't dump it in an alley in the West District, where he doesn't know his way around. That's my analysis from the rational point of view. From the intuitive angle, Zhang Donglai is a hopeless coward. When he gets angry, at most he'll curse someone out in public. He doesn't have the guts to kill. I mean, thank goodness. From the time Feidu had sat down, these last sentences were the ones he'd spoken that sounded something like human speech. Zhang Donglai was Director Zhang's older brother's son. He was a late-in-life child, and his family was well off. He was spoiled rotten, delicate, and useless. But when Joa had seen him a few times, he really didn't think he had either the courage or the psychological quality. The rest would have to rely on the police force investigation. He wouldn't get anything out of Feidu. Lowen Joe closed his notebook and stood up. Hey, behind him Feidu suddenly called him to a stop. Lowen Joe looked back. A small object came hurtling towards him. He automatically reached out and grabbed it, then found that Feidu had tossed him a USB drive. Or is it with the footage on it that he discovered? Feidu said, in a criminal case, there are several circumstances that can easily attract public notice. First, the scale is large. For example, a terrorist attack. That's news. Second, the method is especially abnormal and brutal. For example, something like a serial killer that turned into a colorful urban legend. That's novelty. Third, the victim belongs to a low-risk group. For example, students and wage earners who live well-regulated lives. The law-abiding middle class that excites group panic out of identification with the victim. Fourth, something that strikes at the heart of a deep-seated and long-standing social conflict. For example, matters touching public rights, privileges, the moral defiancies of the social elite. That's a topic. Your case here doesn't touch on any of these, but from the start it has received an unusual degree of notice. The dull thunder, just about to lay down its arms, cracked indistinctly somewhere very remote, giving his words a lengthy vibration. Once the temporary, unusual notice has passed, according to reason, people would soon have lost interest. But now Zhang Donglai has been implicated too. Feidu stood and went to Luo Wenzhou. Brushing past him, he softly said, "Is that a coincidence? Or someone playing with you?" Luo Wenzhou's expression hardened. "No need to thank me. I'm doing this for Taran." Feidu picked up his umbrella and left without another look at him. Feidu, Ruinjo suddenly said, "It's next week, right? 7 whole years. You ought to start afresh." "Oh, just hitting him where it hurts." Feidu ignored him, maintaining his even steps. He walked away without looking back. Oh my word, we're doing well. Like, I didn't think we would be finished with chapter 8 already. Okay, we shall see how far we get with chapter 9. Because unfortunately, I can't do a full chapter 9, I don't think. Chapter 9, Julian 8. Wang Hongliang was in the prime of life, but half a lifetime of dissipation had left him somewhat aged before his time. The flesh of his cheeks sagged with a wool of its own down to the level of his chin. At a glance he looked like a Sharpei plotting the overthrow of all mankind. Why is that such a funny description? Oh my goodness. He inclined forward, examining the detained Ma Xiaowei while puffing away at a cigarette, blowing out a local southern gates of heaven. Ma Xiaowei was too thin, so thin it nearly gave his face a look of a pathetic, childish awkwardness. Although he had a cell to himself, his whole body was still pulled taut, his eyeballs nearly starting from their sockets as they rolled every which way without being able to stop long on any one point. Wang Hongliang tilted his head and fixed a look on him, saying to the person next to him, "So they've slunk off and taken him to the city bureau?" I'm assuming he's talking about Zhang Donglai. The person standing next to him was the head of the Sub-Bureau's criminal investigation team. This person had hardly made his presence known while cases were being investigated. For his orders, he relied on the general trend, and for his judgments he relied on his leader, like a mouthpiece transmitting down from above. He held up an ashtray and approached to receive Wang Hongliang's cigarette end. "That's what Xiao Haiyang reported." "I didn't expect this. I really never expected it. It hardly seemed real. How could there be such a coincidence in this world?" Hong Hong Liang laughed aloud, showing teeth but no eyes, becoming a Sharpei receiving the songs and praises of emancipated serfs. "No wonder my fortune said that although I would encounter obstacles this year, an eminent person can sometimes turn a misfortune into a blessing. The 3,000 yen Serenity Talisman did some good. It turned out that aside from never making and always marring, that Xiao Hai Yang may actually have some use." I don't like the way he's talking about Xiao Hai Yang. I actually really like Xiao Hai Yang. "Director Wang, what do you think we should do now?" the person next to him asked deferentially. Luo Wenzhou had stretched out his hand too quickly. Wang Hongliang combed through the sparse hairs on top of his head. "Just because the city bureau's chief's relative is a major suspect, they've gotten out from underfoot." Oh. As he spoke, he paced a few circles, then waved his hand. "Never mind. Leave it to them. If even Luo Wenzhou isn't afraid others will say they're abusing power for personal benefit, what do I have to be afraid of? Now that a second suspect has turned up, it clearly shows this case is much more complicated than we imagined. It's a case of a body being dumped after a killing. It's all the fault of the surrounding masses confusing the course of the investigation with their misleading testimony. The noises they heard had no connection to the case. Let them go investigate where they like, Chengguang Mansion or anywhere else. As long as it isn't the West District, we'll do all we can to support the City Bureau's work." "Director Wang is bold but cautious," said the head of the Sub-Bureau's criminal investigation team. bootlicking with a smile. Then he said, "Another time you must tell me about the place you got this talisman from. It's really very effective." Oh my goodness, these people are like in their own world. Well said. Give them my name when you go. They can give you a good discount. Huang Huang Liang patted his subordinate's shoulder. You know, when you reach this age, you start to find that not believing in things doesn't work out. To get wealth and promotion, you have to rely on fate. Right, didn't I hear the victim's relative is coming soon? Send them to the city bureau too. He headed outside and suddenly thought of something, looked back at Ma Xiaowei, and meaningfully said, "Look at that child. At first glance he doesn't seem like much, but when you look closely, his features are really lucky. Something of the full, prominent forehead, round jaw, and chin look." The person next to him had no idea what he was talking about. "Therefore," said Huang Huang Liang with a laugh, "he's very blessed." While the whole flower market district was uh, deliberating divinity, there was a deep depression hanging over Yang City's city bureau. Oh, what? Sorry, that tripped me up. Taran left the interrogation room and released a long breath while leaning heavily against the wall. Apparently, Zhang Donglai had had a fever as a child, and that had cooked his brain and made him grow up into an out and out stupid. I'm not going to say that word. He had to be forgiven 8 times a minute in order to keep up a conversation. And this was the even tempered Tauran. Another person would have been flipping tables long ago. I love that description. I love that description so much. Lu and Joe was waiting for him at the door, holding a USB drive in his hand. He was just subconsciously twisting it in his fingers. Xiao Haiyang, who had been listening in on the interrogation, seemed a little scared of him. He was maintaining a fixed distance between them. Lu Wenjue looked up. "How was it?" "Zhang Donglai says he may have gotten a little drunk that day. He saw an unemployed youth bothering his little sister, thought he was a delinquent, got excited and hit him. Afterwards he didn't remember just who it was he'd hit. I showed him a photograph of the victim and he said he looked a little familiar. He couldn't be sure. And according to him, he didn't formally apologize to anyone or give anyone a phone. That last part, I think, is true. The brat still hasn't worked out that there's anything wrong with beating people up." Taran pinched the bridge of his nose. "Right. Did Feidu come by just now?" "He's already left," Lowenjo confirmed, then remembered something and glared at Taran. Added, "That little brat, he's getting more and more disgraceful. It's all your fault for spoiling him." Taran. Dot dot dot. Oh goodness. Okay, let's see where we're at. I think maybe like 5 more minutes and then I need to go. But yeah, the drama we've had, I don't want to end like on the dot at 5. Um, he thought that this complaint sounded very strange. Lo and Drew tossed him the USB drive he was holding. "Go look into this. There may be something useful on it." Taran took it in bewilderment. "What's this?" "I don't know, but I figured it's the surveillance footage from Cheng Gong Mansion." Lu Wenzhou looked at the erasable Zhang Donglai through the surveillance. "I've met his sister. She's a pretty normal. Call her to confirm that what Zhang Donglai said is reliable. I'm going to have a word with Director Zhang." But when Lu Wenzhou went to the Director General's office for the second time, he didn't see Director General himself. A stocky man looked up and nodded genially at Lu Wenzhou. "You're here?" This man was about the same age as Director Jung. There was an old scar over his right brow, from his forehead to just over his eyelid, but he didn't look fierce at all. Everything about him seemed very kindly. Lauren Joe was a little taken aback. Director Lu? Director Lu's name was Lu Yuliang. He was Director Zhang's second in command. He had been a criminal policeman for many years, solved many major cases, and caught countless diabolical criminals in all the eras when technology was still underdeveloped. He was one of the legends of Yan City's city bureau. However improper a person was, he could he would have to restrain himself a little in front of Director Lu. Right. For now, say anything you have to say to me. Lao Zhang has stepped back to avoid suspicion. You people, you really shouldn't have brought this person here. When you suspect someone, you have to arrest and investigate him on the spot. What do you mean by bringing him here? Are you planning to use your authority to shield him? Or putting up a sign that says 300 silver coins are not buried here? Oh, that I don't know why, but that expression is so funny to me. Director Lu sighed, then pointed at Lo Wenjor. Wenjor, you're alright, but you're a little too nervy. So young, and already much too shrewd. Lo Wenjor's expression didn't flicker. He looked out and scanned the empty corridor, then cautiously closed the door. Uncle Lu. Director Lu froze. There is a criminal policeman from the sub-bureau downstairs. His name is Xiaohai Yang. Lo Wenjor kept his voice very low. When he gave us a report on the circumstances of the case at the very outset, he said, "We can't discount the possibility that this isn't the first crime scene." I thought then that sounded a little unnatural, because whether it is or isn't the initial crime scene is something we determine according to the evidence and the medical examiner's findings. Before the evidence has been collected, absent a clear indication, very few people will discuss whether it's the initial crime scene or if the body was moved. Wang Hongliang reacted too, berating him right in front of my face. I didn't think too much of it. I just thought that Xiao Haiyang's way of thinking may be different from other people's. I don't quite understand what you mean, said Director Lu heavily. Director Zhang sent me to investigate Wang Hongliang, said Lo Wenzhou. I just received a report from an informer. I now suspect Wang Hongliang is colluding with the Flower Market District's drug trafficking gangs. Oh! And I have to end it here. Damn, okay. Well, that's quite a place to end it. I need to kind of like make a note or something so I don't lose my place when we get back to it. But yeah, that's the end of today's live, and I'm living for every single second of it. Like the dynamic between Lo and Joa and Feidu is just so, I don't have another word for it, like delicious. Like it's so fun and great, and it has a similar vibe to me as when Cushing and Joshushu's had, but also very different at the same time. But just some of the elements that I really enjoyed about their dynamic is also present here, and I'm living for it. Oh my goodness, I can't wait to see the scene where they kind of both freak out over the fact that Taran has a meeting with a girl, because that was one of my favorite scenes, and also the umbrella scene. But we'll get there. We'll get there. I don't want to get ahead of myself yet. But yeah, okay. So thank you guys so much for joining. Thanks, this was great. Thank you for reading for us. Thanks for today. It's a pleasure. Thank you guys so much for joining me. It's so fun to be able to experience this with people instead of like being in my own bubble and not being able to like exclaim to anyone about the exciting moments. Um, so anyway, we shall be resuming with the next, hopefully next 4 chapters, on next Saturday. And I'm going to Comic Con on Friday, and I'm so excited. Sorry, totally out of off topic, but yeah, the relationship is so fun, but also like very grounded in a way. Agreed, and it gets even better. Thanks for today. It was fun. Thank you guys. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I shall see you either tomorrow for the Scum Villain reading or next on Saturday for the next few chapters of Mordu. Bye.